Hola clase, hoy vamos a trabajar con el libro texto en la página 294 y 295. Estas páginas tienen que ver con el condicional. Algunos de ustedes ya estudiaron el modo condicional conmigo, pero algunos no, así que vamos a repasar. El modo condicional, es decir, would, es usado en español igual que en inglés y es muy fácil de conjugar. Por ejemplo, visitar, comer y aplaudir. Los tres verbos son idénticos, o sea, same ending for AR, ER, and IR. Por ejemplo, visitaría, comería, aplaudiría. Also notice that verb ending is very much similar to the imperfect ER-IR, right? Comía, bebía, vivía. But the one difference here is that in the conditional tense, just like the future, we add the ending at the end of the verb without eliminating the last two letters, okay? So while in the imperfect tense in the past, like I used to eat, yo comía, in the imperfect tense, yo comía, in the conditional tense, I would eat, it would be yo comería, so comería. Muy fácil, okay? Bueno, vamos a continuar. Entonces, usamos para polite requests. And the most common one is one that you already heard, me gustaría. Me gustaría ir a la farmacia. Me gustaría ir a ver mis amigos. No, polite requests. I would like. Okay? Bueno, it's very similar to the future tense, meaning that it has the same irregular forms. So if you recall the irregular forms from the future, that's the same for the imperfect. And so let's take a look at some of those. Decir, diría, haría, podría, pondría, habría, querría, sabría, saldría, tendría, vendría. Now, you will also see later on that one of the most common uses for the conditional is hypothetical situations. Like when you're talking to a friend and you say, you know, I wouldn't do that, which would be yo no haría eso, not hacería, because hacer is an irregular form, right? Now, all of these verbs are very much used at all times in Spanish. Even the verb haber, meaning there is, there are, no? If you would say like there would be something, habría de encontrar una casa nueva, no? There was the need to find a new house. Now, the one here that you're probably not going to use is the verb querría. And the reason for that is that, one, it sounds a lot like quería, querría. And two, is that if I wanted to say I would wanted to go to the party, you wouldn't say that. In English or Spanish, you would probably just say something in the lines, or I would go to the party, or versus I would wanted to go to the party. You see what I mean? So probably not going to use that, but everything else, yes. Okay. Now, let's take a look at these examples, because it says that in English the conditional is a compound, right? I would go. But in Spanish, it is only one verb. And sometimes I see that when students use Google Translate and they write something like in the imperfect tense past, and they say I would go and to my grandparents' house, and they say yo solía ir instead of yo iba a la casa de mis abuelos. So that's the same thing here. There's no two verbs. It's just one verb, okay? So yo no me pondría ese vestido. No, I would not wear that dress. ¿Vivirían ustedes en otro país? No? Would you like to live in another country? Okay, now we talked about being polite, like, me gustaría. So also, obviously, a polite request. For example, would you like, te gustaría, podría, sería, ¿no? Sería tan amable de venir a mi oficina. ¿Podría abrir la ventana, por favor? So it is used very commonly for polite requests and hypothetical situations. Okay. Now, one thing that can be a little bit confusing between conditional and future tenses, because when you look at the timeline, so for example, if this is the present, and here it moves forward in the timeline, like for example, if you say something like tomorrow, I believe it's going to be sunny. Okay, you can express yourself that in a couple of different ways in Spanish. You can say creo que mañana hace sol. That'll be the easiest one, right? Present, present. Creo que mañana hace sol. Okay. I could use the present continuous idea of mañana va. Creo que mañana va a hacer sol. I believe that tomorrow it's going to be sunny. Or I could, since we start in the present and we go into the future, I could use future tense. Creo que mañana hará sol. Now, when we start the sentence in the past tense, okay, so for example, yo creía or yo creí, then what you have to try to understand is that the conditional functions like a future, but a future for a past action. So I cannot say that creía que hoy hace sol. Even in English, that wouldn't sound very nicely, no? I thought that today is sunny, right? It sounds weird. And definitely not future tense. Creía que hoy hará sol. That would be the equivalent of saying in English, I thought that today will be sunny. You wouldn't do that in English, right? You would say, I thought that today would be sunny. So, same thing in Spanish. Creía que hoy haría sol. So, things like to walk in pairs. So, present with present or future because we're moving forward. But if the first part of the sentence starts in the past, then that use would. Okay. Now, speaking of would, let's talk about imperfect tense because remember when we looked at the acronym WEATHER for imperfect, where the R stood for repetition, things that were habitual, like I used to go to my parents' house. Like, let's reminisce about the pre-corona days. I could say that I would visit my friends. I would play lacrosse after school. I would do this and that. Okay. Now, do you realize that all of these I would could be replaced by used to, right? We're talking about past actions. So, I used to see my grandparents every weekend. I used to go to church. I used to play lacrosse. I used to attend Spanish Honor Society in person. So all of these are imperfect because the idea of used to, right? I used to go to my grandparents' house would be yo iba a la casa de mis abuelos because that's imperfect. It's past tense. Now, when I say I used to go to my grandparents' house, sometimes in English we express that a little bit differently. And there's no different in significance, it's just a different way to express. We say, I would go to my grandparents' house every weekend. Now, if I want to express that, I still have to use imperfect, just like we learned back in Spanish too. Yo iba a la casa de mis abuelos. Whether you're trying to say I used to go or I would go back then. Now, remember, you want to use conditional only if you are talking about something that it's would, as in like hypothetical or polite request. Okay, all right. Now, and the last thing about conditional. So we talked about polite requests, and we also talked about hypothetical situations, right? I would do this if I were you. Is the idea of probability. Okay. So when we talked about probability with the future tense, okay, like for example, you're wondering about the weather, okay, and you say, is it gonna rain tomorrow? Okay, you see how you say it's gonna rain tomorrow? There is an idea of it's going to happen. Okay, so va a llover mañana, and you can express that that doubt, okay, that probability by using the future, right? Lloverá, lloverá mañana, okay? Now, what if you were trying to express doubt about something that happened in the past tense? Then you can use conditional, okay? So let's look at the examples. Serían las 11 de la noche cuando Elvira me llamó. It's kind of like saying it must have been, it was probably, cuando Elvira me llamó. Now, there is nothing here preventing you from saying, eran las 11 de la noche cuando Elvira me llamó. Grammatically, by using the imperfect, it's fine, no mistake. But it means something different. If you're saying eran las 11 de la noche cuando Elvira me llamó, you're literally saying that it was 11 when Elvira called me. Whereas when you say serían las 11 de la noche cuando Elvira me llamó, you are not sure about it. You understand? Let's look at the last example here. Sonó el teléfono. Llamaría a Emilio para cancelar nuestra cita. So the telephone rang. Okay. If I say llamó Emilio, then he called. But llamaría Emilio, it's like I wonder if that was Emilio. So that is literally the icing on the cake, and something that we don't use it as often as the idea of polite requests and hypothetical situation, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. No, like I wouldn't do that. Okay, I wouldn't buy this, but it is something that you see sometimes in Spanish. Now, last, let's do. I only have a couple of minutes here in this recording, so let's try the conditional here. Tú apreciarías, comprendías, compartirías, Marcos, poner, pondría, vendría, querría, with a roll in the R a little more strongly. Nosotras seríamos, sabríamos, iríamos. And I'm reaching the end of this recording. So I'm going to assign you some work from the book, okay? And then we're going to have later on next week some activities and a flip grid, so you get a chance to talk about the conditional tense in a project that I'm really excited about. That's it for today. So, adios.